Welcome back to the final day of the National Government Ethics Summit. We are resuming for our afternoon sessions. And on tap for this afternoon, we have proposed gift amendments and gift related issues streaming in this room.
That's right.
And then in the other live streams, live stream 2, we'll have two sessions for you. One at 1:45, and that'll be on establishing effective ethics program processes. And then again at 3:15 is understanding core elements of post-employment restrictions. So although we only have one more session here, we'll have two sessions still streaming in the other room, Ryan.
That's right. So one thing as an administrative thing, at the conclusion of this session here on this live stream, hang with us for just about another 10 minutes before you switch over to Stream 1. We're going to be interviewing some of the senior leadership at OGE and getting some brief remarks from them about the upcoming transition as well as the summit. So we hope that you will tune in for that before switching over to Stream 1.
Stream 2, right?
Sorry, Stream 2. But I'm really excited about this session that's coming up about the proposed regulations. The gifts regulations have existed for decades at this point, and some of the changes that OGE is talking about doing seem to be very exciting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have probably wanted some changes, so I think this is the opportunity to, kind of take all of that feedback in and try to implement some of those.
Yeah, so we hope that you enjoy this session. We're going to cut away real quick because we have some more interviews that we would like to bring you from other presenters, one of whom is going to be going on Stream 2 here shortly. Welcome back, and we have one of OGE's presenters here with us, Kim Sikora Panza, who is a staff attorney. In which branch are you in?
The Ethics Law and Policy branch.
Great, thank you. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. Could you tell us a little bit about the session that you're going to be teaching over in Room A, right?
Yes, we're going to be in Room A this afternoon, the final session of the summit. So hopefully, folks, we saved the best for last, I'd like to think.
Yeah.
Our session is on the 207 A1 and A2 post-employment restrictions. And it's going to be a presentation. I am one of the presenters. I'm joined by my colleague, Vince Salamone, as well as Jeff Green, who's at the Department of Defense. And the idea of the presentation is that we're going to go through the basic core elements of 207A1 and A2. So just to establish the lay of the land of what folks need to know for counseling employees on post-government restrictions. I'm going to discuss some of the exceptions that are applicable. And then Vince has developed a hypothetical fact pattern, which we like to use to illustrate some of the nuts and bolts type things that Jeff and I would have started the presentation with.
And I would think with the transition that this is, perfect timing for this type of counseling and information that you're going to be disseminating.
Absolutely. I know my colleague Rachel Dowell and Funmi, who's at the White House. Rachel's also detailed at the White House right now. They did a presentation yesterday on the 207 C&D restrictions. So those are the post-employment restrictions applicable to senior and very senior employees. And I believe that's streaming. That was in one of the streaming rooms. So that's going to be helpful for folks who are counseling the higher level officials. But then, yes, a transition, there are going to be more than just the higher level officials leaving. So people, ethics officials, it's just a refresher to remind them of, the post-employment counseling that's going to be relevant for everyone that is going to be leaving government at the transition or at any time.
So it's good to know. It's good to know the restrictions. Do you have any advice for our listeners out there when they go to try and apply these restrictions to people who are leaving government?
To the ethics officials who are
Yes,
who are
yeah.
working. I guess my first would be it was something that surprised me when I joined the ethics community. Always go to the rule. I carry around my rule book. I carry around my regulations with me everywhere. And it seemed strange at first, but when I saw seasoned veterans who have been doing ethics for 40 years always open up the rule book and take a look, what we say in the rules and the regulations, it's a great starting point, and don't take it for granted even if you've been doing it forever. I would also say just rely on the wealth of knowledge in the community. So in terms of other ethics officials that might be in your particular office, OGE desk officers, and the wealth of training materials or legal advisory materials. There's so much information out there that can inform you as you're trying to decipher a particular instance or provide counseling to a given employee.
Great. Well, is there anything that you think that, or maybe you'll address this in your session, that the one thing that you think ethics officials can do to better prepare for what's probably going to be a surge of people needing counseling?
I think it's just preparation is the best defense, and you just asked what they could do to prepare, but it's thinking about, it's being aware that they're probably going to have an increase in the number of post-employment requests, and figure out a way to systematically deal with that. Is there additional training or guidance, written guidance that they might want to put together to share with employees as a starting point for that, to help make their jobs easier, but also make sure that employees are getting appropriate advice as they leave government. So I think knowing that this transition is coming up is something that gives you the opportunity to take the time to figure out what your plan of attack is going to be, and how you can make sure that you are able to handle the volume of requests and give your employees the best advice at the same time.
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. We're going to cut away before the next session here. I just wanted to say thank you one more time for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We look forward to watching your session on Stream 2.
section here. Before we get started, a little bookkeeping here. It's late. People are hesitant to engage, plus you're all so shy. So you should have picked up a red piece of paper on your way in. You're going to want to fold that in half, because when we get to the scenarios, I've been noticing in the sessions deadly quiet whenever we ask a question. So you're going to have to vote. And we'll tell you, but generally, red will mean no, green will mean yes, right? Because you're so shy, you're probably not going to want everyone knowing how you're voting. So you vote like this. Red, green, okay? The only people who know how you voted is me and Chris, and the people who are turning around and looking at you. Don't worry about the other people. That's the best thing they got to do with their time. You know, it's, at any rate, we'll mock them if they do that. So it's really kind of anonymous voting. So I hope you all participate. You will notice we did not give you a yellow sheet. We thought about that, but we knew that if we gave you yellow, we'd just see nothing but yellow every time. So you've got to make a decision. So don't be worried. Yeah, no, don't do this. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and well, let me introduce myself. And I'm Dave Apal. I'm the General Counsel at OGE. I've been in government ethics for a long time. Started with the Army, then was with the Senate Ethics Committee, Department of Labor, and the White House at the end of the Clinton administration, and then at the Office of U.S. Trade Representative. So I've been doing this wrong. So you know, when you're making your choices, don't worry, no matter how many answers you get wrong, you'll still have less wrong answers than I've had in my career. So.
And I'm Chris Wartz. I'm an assistant counsel at the Office of Government Ethics. So what we're going to talk about today, and I'm not going to, that's pretty much it for my background. So, so what we're going to talk about today are really two batches of information. First, we're going to talk about the proposed gift regulation that went out in November of last year. Our comment period closed, and we're working on a final rule right now. And then when we finish that conversation, if we finish that conversation, we'll move on to a series of questions related to gift issues that can come up in the election cycle and in the transition period. So to start off with, as everybody probably already knows, we put out a proposed rule November 27th of 2015, and that's in volume 80 of the federal regulations at 74004 through 740018. This is really the first comprehensive chop at subpart B that OG has taken since the rules became effective as part of the larger standards of ethical conduct in 1993, and they were actually finalized in 92, but they became effective in 93. And this is more than us just looking at the rules and implementing some of our past guidance. It is that. We made cosmetic changes, technical changes. We updated citations. We changed the structure slightly to make the rule a little bit more approachable, a little bit easier to understand where things are located. And we also made some substantive changes. So there are a lot of changes that we made, but I think if you look at the rule, you'll see that it is largely still very similar to the rule that we left it as, and that is by intention. So let's talk a little bit about where we came from and where we're going with the proposed rule. So you see a timeline that includes 4 years in here. This year and the past 3 years. And that really is a timeline that it's taken for us to work through the proposed regulation. In 2013, it was really a directive that came out of our director's office to look at parts of the standards of ethical conduct and figure out if there are changes that we can make to ensure that the standards of ethical conduct, including subpart B, were effective, were efficient, aligned with the principles of ethical conduct, and were a helpful complement to the conflict of interest laws, which is a requirement that we have in the Ethics in Government Act, Section 402, to do what I'll just call briefly a type of retrospective review. We really started meeting in February 2014 internally. That's when staff members in OGE's General Counsel's office, our Presidential Nominations Branch, and our Ethics Law and Policy Branch started meeting. And there are a good number of us, so if you're in the room and you worked on the project, raise your hand. So we have one up there, a couple of people over here. So thanks to all those people who looked around. Those were really the people on staff that helped put this together. And when we did this review, we started from first principles. We were thinking, why do we have gift regulations in the very first place? We were looking at structure. We were looking at the system of the way that the rules work currently, where there were systematic deficiencies, where we could make better choices that led to results that aligned with what we really wanted out of a gift regulation. And that included looking at guidance that we've had in the past 20 plus years, looking at our brothers and sisters over in the House, the Senate, and the judiciary, looking at what states were doing. So it was a very comprehensive review. And being part of a comprehensive review, we also started getting you involved in the ethics community very early. So in May 2014, we sent out an electronic survey to each one of the designated agency ethics officials in the United States, seeking input on a number of general and specific questions, trying to get a feel for where you were seeing some issues, where we could make changes, what were the biggest concerns for you. We got a handful of responses back, and those were very helpful for us. They started to shape our drafting process. And once we started to get some ideas, some big ideas set into place, then we came back to you at our last summit. If many of you, or I can see people that were in the room when we came back in our 2014 summit, and we had 3 sessions where we put forward some ideas, we got responses from you, and we incorporated those responses. Now, our back and forth with you went on for the latter part of 2014 into March 2015, including a meeting, 2 meetings that we held in February of 2015, where we brought in ethics officials from many, many agencies. We even had, I think, DODIG there. We had people from OMB. We had people from the cabinet level agencies come and give their viewpoints on, the ethics officials from those agencies give their viewpoints on the draft that we had created. And we incorporated those changes as well. And then finally in March, we had a product that we felt comfortable with, and then we went to OPM and DOJ. If you don't know about the OGE regulatory process, the Ethics in Government Act and our executive orders require that we work with OPM and DOJ. And there's good reasons for that. Chapter 75 deals with personnel actions that can be taken against people, and that's the result of violating of an ethics law. So that's why we contact OPM and DOJ. Obviously, these are sort of penumbral to the conflict of interest law. So we want to make sure that we have talked to those folks, and we're required to. So, and finally, in August, we went forward with 12866 process, which is the executive order regulatory review process. We went to OMB, and again, through that process, we got fantastic, and I really want to emphasize that, fantastic input from the agencies that was extremely useful in making this rule a polished proposal. In November, we came out with the proposed rule. The comment period closed in January, and what do you guys care about? We are hoping to have a final rule out in spring or summer. Okay. So how many comments do you think that we got? Does anybody know? I know. Does anybody? One comment? 7 comments. That's a little low. We got 10. So the comment period, 2 from agencies, 4 from individuals, and 3 from professional associations, and 1 from a law firm. But what they commented on our proposed rule was pretty much everything we did. So if you had any ideas, well, maybe I should have said something, somebody probably already did. And so I just want to run through a couple of the highlights here and just point out what some of these comments were and what we're thinking about as we go into our final rule. So what's that big slice down there, I guess, on your right side? Does anybody want to hazard a guess? Because you probably can't read the tiny little aspects. It's a widely attended gathering. Did anybody not think that? So we got 6 commenters that wanted to talk about the widely attended gathering. As many of you know, we proposed some procedural changes as to the widely attended gathering, and that was something that we thought was important for ensuring the public's confidence in, and that's why we proposed that. We did get some comments about whether those procedural changes may put limitations on the ability for the public sector to interface with the public and with the private sector. Now, what I'll say is that's something that we've always seen as being an important equity. It's an equity that we thought about when we wrote the rule, wrote the proposed rule, and it is something that we are continuing to think about carefully and give full consideration as we go into a final rule. The next highest what I would say category, the silver medal for comments, where 4 people commented on disposition of gifts. And really all the comments were the same. These comments were, can you change the disposition authority to allow us to give gifts that we accepted but weren't supposed to accept to a charity? Now, this is something that OG has been reticent to do in the past. We have language in our 1992 or 1991 preamble dealing with this because there are some concerns that we have about it. But because it was raised, we are going to be thinking very hard about it and whether those concerns continue to be to hold weight, and whether there are ways that we could think about doing it. But obviously, we do have concerns about that. That's why it wasn't proposed. It's why we did not incorporate it in our 1992 final rule. But the commenters brought it up, so we are going to be looking hard at it again. And then 3 commenters talked about the appearance standard, which was new. It's something that we added to the rule because we want we really want the focus to be on whether you're affecting the public trust in the things that you do and ensuring that public trust as you act in your government capacity. But there were questions about it. Too many factors, maybe? I don't know. So we're going to go back and look very hard at it to see if there are ways that we can change it, to see if there are concerns that people brought up, whether we can address those, or whether there are really some strong equities that we need to ensure that we protect, that we thought were important when we proposed the rule. We also got a couple of other areas. But because we have a lot to go through today, instead of going through all 17 of these areas, I would just say these are the things that we're thinking about. Now, barring any questions, we're going to go on to the second portion of the presentation today.
Obviously, we could spend probably the entire session answering comments on the gift regulations. We've got a couple minutes if people had questions, but if not, we'll move on. Okay. So there's something about human nature that periods of transition are often marked with gifts. Gifts beget, or transitions beget gifts. For example, speaking of begetting, you get gifts when you have a child, and then we mark birthdays with gifts. We mark Sweet 16 parties with big parties and gifts. I didn't get a Sweet 16 party, but we just there's all sorts of things we give gifts for. So it's not surprising that at a time of transition, we see a lot of people giving and getting gifts. And today we're going to not concentrate on the gift rule as a whole, but concentrate on those type of gifts we expect to see coming up during a transition period. So in that discussion, we're going to talk about these topics. I'm going to talk about the Hatch Act exception to the gift rule, and then the gifts associated with the political conventions. Chris will be talking about the inauguration parties. and gifts between employees and transition team members, an interesting legal status there. Then people are going to have going away parties, and I'll talk about the gifts that are that are involved there. And then Chris will talk about gifts from Pre Confirmation Nominees. This actually sometimes happens perhaps to you because you're helping these people get their financial disclosure form in order, and frequently they're annoyed, but sometimes they're grateful. And so it's not inconceivable that you'll get a gift. Obviously, there's gifts with new appointees and swearing-in parties, and then we'll talk about reporting. So let's talk about the Hatch Act exception. How many of you are? I mean, I have to tell you, this is one of those exceptions that is buried in the regulation, and I rarely use it. In fact, Chris put together these slides, and I said, oh yeah, there is an exception for that. You're probably not going to use it a whole lot in many ways. Some of you may have been analyzing. The Hatch Act exception says essentially if you're working on a campaign, which means if you're one of these less restricted employees under the Hatch Act, and you're working on a campaign, the campaign can give you gifts and transportation and lodging and things in connection with you working on the campaign. It's kind of common sense. Indeed, many of us, well, common sense isn't what we do, but most people probably don't even think of that as being a gift. But as you know, anything of value is a gift. So we make it a gift, and then we say there's an exception for it. You may have thought that, well, why can't we just use the generic gifts in connection with outside employment or business activities to accept these gifts? And it's conceivable, it's not entirely clear that you could not. To clarify, there's some concern whether volunteering on a campaign would be employment or business activity. Took that off the table by putting the Hatch Act exception in. The gift has to be in connection with active participation in a political campaign, and the gift has to be provided to you by a 527E committee. And we got a slide here on what is and what is not. Basically, I mean, if you're doing campaign work, you're probably doing it for a 527E. That's the national political parties, the state parties, a political action committee, an authorized campaign committee. Who would not be involved? If there was a 501c3 you were working for that was actively engaged in political activity until they lose their 501c3 status, that would be covered, a 501c4. But most of your campaign organizations are going to be covered by this. If you're not sure whether something's a 527E, you can check the IRS website for the 8871 filing. I don't think you're going to have to do that very often, but just keep this one kind of in your hat. And if someone asks you, well, wait a minute, I got some free transportation from the campaign for work I was doing, you don't have to panic and go, how can that be? We got an exception here covering that. Yes. Good point. If they are not prohibited sources, but for, like at the Department of Labor, a campaign has employees. They're covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act, so they would be regulated by the Department of Labor. Well, we've messed with that, but there are, labor's not alone. There are other agencies out there that, without regulatory exceptions, have virtually everyone being a prohibited source. I used to say when I was at Labor, how do you know if someone's a prohibited source? And the answer was you check for a pulse. And there may be other agencies like that. But good point. Many of you may not have to use this at all. I can't read that. Repeat the questions. I repeated the sign. Okay, the question was, why do you even need this? Because would a campaign committee be a prohibited source, or is the gift being given to you because of your official position? And for many of you, Carrie's absolutely right. You don't have to worry about this exception at all. It wouldn't be a prohibited gift. Unless, of course, you have people working for you who work for the Obama administration, who are political appointees in the Obama administration. Actually, no, I'm sorry, take that one back. If you have people working for you that are in the Obama administration, they are not allowed to accept gifts from lobbyist organizations. So, and that if most of these 527s are not going to be lobbyist organizations, but they could be. All right, so now we're going to get to play with our cards. So here's a scenario for you. Mindy is a GS-12 analyst with the Department of Labor. Can you read this, or do you want me to read it to you? Read it, okay. I'm assuming that's because it's not clear. But she is a less restricted employee and can therefore participate in political organizations. On the weekends during the election season, she travels to various states to help the party drum up support for a particular candidate. Occasionally, the state party organization will offer her and others free lodging while they are in town with the candidate. Can she accept the lodging? Give me a green for a yes and a red for a no. Indeed. See, we gave you an easy one to start with to kind of warm you up here.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good. Yeah, we saw almost all greens out there. Actually, we saw all greens out there. If you held up red and I didn't see it, I wouldn't point that out to me. So, yeah, she can do it. This is covered by the Hatch Act exception. Additionally, it may be that this would not be a prohibited gift in the first place because it's not given to her because of her official position or from a prohibited source, but there was a reason I put her in the Department of Labor. Probably is a prohibited source. Now, what if Mindy was a Schedule C full-time political appointee and the person providing Mindy with the gift was a registered lobbyist? Red for no, green for yes. Yeah, that's right. You can't take it. She's a registered lobbyist, a full-time political appointee, is barred from taking gifts from the lobbyist. Certain exceptions apply. The Hatch Act amendment, surprisingly enough, was one of the ones exempted out of the, or as you might remember when the Obama gift ban came out, they said you could use certain exceptions, you could use the personal relationship exception. This was an exception they could not use. Okay, let's change the facts slightly just to make this more interesting, which, given the level of answers on the last time, is not a terribly high bar. Occasionally, while Mindy is in town, she will be asked to attend dinners with representatives of organizations that are considered endorsing the candidate that Mindy favors. Mindy does not engage in fundraising. Generally, Mindy pays for these dinners out of her own funds. However, last weekend she went to dinner with the head of an influential labor organization who offered to pick up her tab. Can she accept this? Yes is green, red is no. Mostly no. There's one green, and I'm going to assume that person caught the little nuance here that labor unions are a prohibited source, could not accept it from the labor union. But if the labor union had a fund dedicated, labor unions are allowed to have political activity funds. Those political activity funds might be available, but that wasn't part of the scenario that it was being paid for out of those funds. Now, the scenario said Mindy does not engage in fundraising. What if she did engage in fundraising? Would the answer be the same? Yes, the answer would be the same. Is there another answer we need to think about? She can't do that. The Hatch Act says government employees cannot be involved in soliciting for campaign contributions, but that's another session. All right. Okay. Okay. The Department of Labor has interfaced with the labor organization in the past and is likely to do so in the future, but the labor organization has no matters currently pending before Mindy's office. Now, Mindy's not a political appointee here, so can she accept? Can she accept from the labor union if the labor union has nothing pending before her office at that time? Yes is green, no is red, no is correct, because we're dealing with prohibited source here, not what we very scientifically refer to at OGE as a bad prohibited source. A bad prohibited source meaning a prohibited source that is directly and substantially affected by the employee's official duties. All right. So much for the Hatch Act exception. I hope you appreciate it. You notice this, this little graphic of a political appointee. We had to look for a real political convention. We had to look really hard to find one that had both red and blue balloons. Just didn't want anyone getting excited or offended. Not that people are looking for reasons to get excited or offended. Okay. Political conventions and associated parties. So there's going to be political conventions coming up this summer. They might even be interesting this year. Typically, a lot of your employees are going to be wanting to go to these conventions. And the first point about these conventions should be obvious. People who go to these are going in their personal capacity, not as part of their official duties. So even though the reason they're going to the political convention is because they're a high-profile political appointee, they're still going in their personal capacity. The agency should not be paying for that. One exception to that, well, there's probably more exceptions, but an exception to that is if your official duties are involved in support in the convention. For example, if you're on a security detail, or for example, employees of the Department of Homeland Security that go to the convention to make sure no terrorist attack takes place, then those people can go in their official capacity. But everyone else is going, most of the people you're dealing with are going in their personal capacity. So if they are active participants in the campaign and they're invited because they're active participants in the campaign, we're back to the Hatch Act exception. They can go if it's paid for by a 427 committee. Interestingly enough, it passes for interesting at this time in the afternoon, the convention hosts themselves generally are not 527E folks, but they could accept it from their party. Obviously, they could pay their own way. A little tricky there because if they're actually performing services for the convention and pay their own way, that could be seen as a political contribution. That's something you should be aware of. That's something I'm not going to worry about. But you need to make sure that, and the campaign should be on top of this, that if they're accepting what they can accept from their volunteers and what they can't. The real problem, of course, is the events that happen at this convention, right? There's going to be parties. There's going to be special stuff going on there. What about that? Well, as luck would have it, the White House generally puts out a memorandum, and they did so in 2012. On June 25, 2012, they put out a memorandum giving guidance on the acceptance of gifts at political conventions, on people who can go to the political conventions and things like that. We're anticipating a similar memo coming out later this year, and I've been told that there's no reason to believe it's going to be substantially different from the past memos. And indeed, the 2012 memo is not very different from the 2008 memo that was put out by the Bush administration. These things do not change that much, other than one significant difference in this memo, of course, is it incorporated the Obama Ethics Pledge. The Obama Ethics Pledge still applies to convention gifts. But there's several types of, when they get invited to these events, there's several exceptions that might apply. And basically, the parties at the political convention are gifts, and they can be accepted in accordance with, or not accepted, depending on whether an exception applies. Again, the Hatch Act exception might apply that we've been talking about. The less than $20 exception might apply, but it won't. And then there's the ever popular, widely attended gatherings. Now, the convention is definitely widely attended. And it's a real struggle for ethics officials to analyze the widely attended here. I mean, schmoozing is often viewed as something that's worthwhile doing, but other agencies need a more substantive determination. How is it in the agency's interest? Because widely attended gathering, you can go if it's in the agency's interest. How is the agency interest? How do you evaluate the agency interest? Good news, you don't have to. It has been determined that these receptions can be accepted under the widely attended gathering exception, just kind of by fiat. Don't, the White House or the President has made that determination. If the gift of free attendance is unsolicited, the event is widely attended, and it's possible that some of these receptions might not be widely attended, so that's important. And that the event is hosted in connection with the convention for the nomination of the President. And finally, the event is not being sponsored. If we're talking about an Obama political appointee, the event's not being sponsored by a lobbying organization. How many of you can see a problem here that you're going to be faced with? All right. That's right. They're going to be there. You're going to be here. They're not even going to know what they're invited to until they're there. So this could be problematic for us. They're going to be calling up and saying, I got invited to this reception, can I go? And you're going to say, well, who's sponsoring it? And they say, oh, hold on, I'll let you check. And then they come back and they just say, this is who's sponsoring it. And you're going to say, okay, well, let me look up the lobbyist. And they'll say, yeah, thanks a lot. The thing's been over for 2 hours. You know, and this is the best I can. Fortunately, we're in the age of cell phones and Wi-Fi and all sorts of things. My advice to you is to make sure the people who are going to this convention know where to look up that website, because it's much more likely that they're going to be able to find the answer there, and you might even give them a little tutoring on this. They're much more likely to be able to find the answer themselves than be able to get the information they need, get it to you, and get an answer back from you in real time. But that's important for your political appointees, and I can see that's I don't know how big of a problem that was in 2012. I worked for at USTR. We didn't send many people to the convention, so we didn't have that problem popping up, but that's something to be aware of. All right, enough with political conventions. Yeah, I wish we could. No, on to the happy result. How about that?
Okay, so we're going to stick with the idea of events here for a second, and while the political conventions are big, they're also generally not hosted in DC. This year, I think the Republican National Convention's in, I think it's Cleveland, and the Democratic National Convention, I think, is in Pennsylvania. So close enough to drive, but not centrally located in DC. That's different with the inauguration. The inauguration is it is a huge celebration in DC. If anyone was here in 2009 during the inauguration, the city shut down. Everybody had a great time. Everybody partied, but there were parties everywhere. It's not just the official inaugural balls that are put on by the Presidential Inaugural Committee, which I'll talk about in a second, but it's everybody from, you know, you have a political organization throwing a party over here to 5 or 6 friends sitting in a, you know, in an apartment throwing a little house party and watching the inauguration on TV. So we have events across the spectrum, and so it's important for us to think about all of these events because they're all going to happen in the same period of time. So you're going to get a lot of questions across a very large spectrum dealing with events, free attendance, discounts. You know, if you were here, you know there was a lot of discounts, and sometimes there are discounts at restaurants. You go and you have the inauguration drink special, red and blue drinks for everybody. So these are gift questions that we should probably think about early. OG has put out guidance in this area in 2009 and in 2012. And I don't know if we're thinking about revisiting that, but we definitely have those on our website. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the inauguration and some of the event type gifts that happen. So the first thing I want to point out is that there is a presidential inaugural committee, and it is not an ad hoc thing. It is something that is created by law. 36 USC Chapter 5 creates the presidential inaugural committee and imbues certain rights to it, some abilities that a normal private sector entity wouldn't have. And it also, that law and then other laws direct the DC government, DOD, and the Department of Interior and GSA to assist the Presidential Inaugural Committee in having the inaugural events in DC and ensuring that they're protected, being able to put up wires, set up parade routes, those types of things. Now, as you're probably aware, the inauguration is a very important period of time for our country, and it is a period of time where we hand off one administration to another. It is a keystone to the United States system of governance. And so the Presidential Inaugural Committee really works very closely to ensure that the events happen in a way that is celebratory and is very enjoyable. They put on a parade. Sometimes they sell souvenirs. That's how they make their money. But they're really, even though they have all of this indicia of being a government entity, they're also really typically set up as a 501c4 social welfare organization. And so that puts us in a little bit of a weird area, because they have a very interesting role in the changing of administrations. Some of these events are very important for high-level officials to go to. It's seen as a ceremonial duty that they attend. So it puts us in a little bit of a weird area. That's not something that you need to really care about. And the reason why is because OG has really sat down and thought about the Presidential Inaugural Committee and the authorities that are surround it and its position. And what we've basically decided is that it's more like a government entity. It's more like a government agency than it is like a private entity. And for those reasons, Subpart B doesn't apply to gifts from the Presidential Inaugural Committee. So if you get a gift and it's from the Presidential Inaugural Committee, then you do not have to analyze that under Subpart B. Now, first, it's probably unlikely that this entity, which is only really in existence for a short period of time, is going to be a prohibited source, but it could be. But you don't have to worry about that. So that's the important thing. Now, there are going to be inaugural events that are thrown by political organizations, so you may be able to rely on the Hatch Act exemption if you're going and you're actively participating in political activity at that event, and the gift is from the political organization. And then if it's from other sources or it's privately sponsored, it's really just the regular Subpart B analysis. Is this a gift? If so, is the gift prohibited? And if so, is there an exception? Okay, so I just wanted to go over a couple of the exceptions that are available. One, these are in our legal advisory, so you know this is really just reiteration. But because there's that long spectrum of everything in the city and there's going to be lots of different types of parties, it's good just to wrap our heads back around some of the exceptions that may apply. And I needed another slide to put the Lincoln inaugural picture on, so I'll drag this out just a little bit more. So first, there's gifts of $20 or less. Now, if this is true, and it may be if you're just sitting around with, you get a small gift or it's a very small party or something along the lines of that. I don't think it's going to be. But if you get a $20, something that qualifies as being $20 or less, you can accept it if you haven't accepted over $50 from the same source in that year. Something to point out here, even if the party is not good, and you think that, yeah, this is not worth 20 bucks, it's the face ticket that matters. So if the ticket's face value is over $20, it's over $20 even if all you got were a couple of shrimp. Gifts that are clearly motivated by a family relationship or a personal friendship also, that could be the case. If you're sitting around with your friends and you're watching the inauguration, the fact that you're watching the inauguration doesn't change the fact that you're sitting around with some friends. Okay, that's how you would analyze it. Political organizations again, and then widely attended gatherings. And this is important for us to think about because there is that wide spectrum. So there may be some things that fall into the category of being a widely attended gathering. And there may be some things that your agency does not have an interest in you going to, even if there's a fair number of people going. So it's really just the regular analysis. The one thing I point out is in our legal advisory 07X14, we talk about social events. And what we said there is there's a higher bar if it's really a social event and it's not like an educational event. So I sort of commend that to you as you're thinking through the types of events that you're getting questions on. So let's go through a scenario real quick. So Caesar works at HUD, at the Housing and Urban Development Department, in a supervisory position. He's a GS-15. He's not a career SES. He's not a more restricted employee. During the election period, he frequently attended fundraisers in the DC metro area for his favorite candidate, who was eventually elected to be president. Cesar is not involved in the transition, but he's very excited that the candidate won, as some people are, you know. 3 days before the inauguration, he receives a phone call from a local real estate management company offering him 2 tickets to attend an inauguration party. Can he attend? What do people think? Okay, I got some reds, I got a few greens, so some more reds than greens, but we do have a split. So let's talk about it. So the answer is, first off, how do we analyze this? Well, we have to look at subpart B, right? So this is a gift from an outside source. So first question, is this a prohibited source? Now, I don't work at HUD, so I'm not going to make the final determination, but there seems to be a nexus here between what the outside entity does and what the person does. So let's just assume that they're a prohibited source for this reason. Okay, there we go. So we have confirmation for our friends at home. HUD has said they are a prohibited source, so that makes this all the more real. So the first question we have is, they're a prohibited source. Is this a gift? Yes, it's a gift. Going to a party, going to an event, free tickets to an event, free attendance, that's a gift. So then the question is there an exception that applies? So let's assume that the tickets are not less than $20. Then the only exceptions that may apply are really the widely attended gathering. There are really no other exceptions that apply. This is not a political organization, so the Hash Act exemption doesn't apply. This is not from the Presidential Inaugural Committee themselves. So this is, again, not going to qualify for that sui generis exception. What we have is just a regular event. So we just have to do our regular analysis. You know, are they the sponsor? If they're not the sponsor, is it under 375? Is there more than 100 people going? Do we have an agency interest here? And so those are the things that you would look at. So let's go to the second part. Let's say instead of the local real estate management company, it was the 527E organization that he volunteered with, and they want to reward volunteers for their volunteer service by offering a free attendance at an unofficial, by unofficial what I mean is not the official presidential inaugural ball, unofficial event thrown by the political organization. What happens? Do you think that they can accept then? I have some greens, much more greens here. I probably shouldn't say that because now I'm inciting people to put theirs up. You know, it's a group effect.
Got some reds.
You got some reds, okay. So the answer here is really going to depend on whether engaged in active participation in political activity. If they are, if that's what is sort of happening here, this is a rally, something along those lines, then they can accept it from the political organization. And OG has indicated in our inaugural advice that, yeah, that is a real possibility in these cases. So it's something to keep in mind. So then I'm going to switch and go into another area that is a little bit novel and a little bit interesting. So does everybody know who the transition team is at this point? It's the last day of our presidential themed summit. So I'll just, you know, so it's tough to ask questions like that. No, I don't. So the transition team is really the set of people that assist the president-elect in transitioning from the government into the new administration during the period of time after the general election. And there may be some people that are involved in sort of the, I guess, proto-transition team right before that and starting now through that period of time to assist candidates also in that process. Now, the transition team members are not government employees. The transition team is usually set up like a 501c4 social welfare organization. Again, it's an outside entity. It's not part of the government. And even during the Presidential Transition Act allows for the payment of some of the office staff of transition team members, but it's very clear in Section 3 of the Presidential Transition Act that those folks are not federal employees for any purposes of the government ethics rules. So transition team members are not government employees unless there's been a government employee detailed, which is a real distinct possibility to the transition team. So when we analyze gifts from the transition team, we have to look at it under subpart B, unless you're dealing with a detailed employee, and then you can look under subpart C. So the other thing is that transition teams typically have their own codes of conduct. And these codes of conduct have gone a little bit built out as time has gone by, a little longer, covered more topics, a little bit more, I guess you could say professional. But these are highly recommended by the Administrative Conference of the United States. We have seen them in every administration. You can see that they typically have this statement that deals with a quid pro quo, a bribery type gift. And I know it's a little fuzzy, but really what it says is that transition team members will sign and say, I'm not going to accept money or a thing of value in exchange for a promise to support or use influence on behalf of any person who's a candidate for any appointed office or place in the United States government. So that's been in a large number of codes of conduct, and in the Obama Biden transition, they also had the transition team members sign something that limited their gift exception, the ability of those transition team members to accept gifts in a way that was very similar to subpart B. And so you see I highlighted here that transition team members weren't allowed to accept gifts over $20 from a federal employee in an agency or department within the scope of their transition responsibilities. So that creates a little bit of a nice parallelism. Transition team members weren't supposed to be taking gifts from federal employees they were working with. Federal employees were likewise restricted by subpart B in accepting gifts that were given from transition team members if the transition team was a private source, which in any case it could be, or it was given because of their official position. And so that's, I think there was a good parallelism there. So let's go through.
Before you get there, just not on gifts. As an ethics official, you're not responsible for the ethics of the transition team members. But as an ethics official, you will be asked questions about what they can do. And you won't be able to give authoritative advice, but once that transition code of conduct comes out, you're going to want to get a handle. You're going to want to get one of those because you are going to be asked questions about it. And like in this case, it has an effect on your employees too. But even though it's not within your jurisdiction, if you think people aren't going to be asking the ethics office how these rules apply to the transition members, you're wrong. You will be. So get a hold of the transition code of conduct, and attached to our 09 advisory opinion on transition, there's a copy of the Bush Cheney one.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's go through the scenario here real quick. Sam is a career official with the Department of the Navy. He's also a senior transition coordinator for his agency. And during the transition, he's tasked with interfacing with the defense parachute team. Okay, so a little point of explanation because the word parachute can be confusing in this situation. The parachute team is really the set of people that comes in with the president-elect. It's part of the transition team, and they parachute into the agency that they're going to. They're sort of like the advanced team. And they go into the agency to assist the president-elect in understanding what's happening over there. So similar to paratroopers, they're sort of the first line of people from the president-elect's team that go into an agency. And so those are the people that you're going to have the most interfacing with from the transition team in many cases, because they'll be the ones on site. So sorry, I probably should have chosen a different agency. And he does that on a daily basis. Sam works with that transition team on a daily basis. The contact he works with is a volunteer for the transition, but he's not paid by the transition. Really, he works full time, and he's on sort of a leave kind of thing with a major defense contractor. Sam and the transition contact do not have a personal relationship. They met for the first time when the transition team came in. And following a tabletop exercise, they were working on a crisis management situation at the Navy offices, going through, sort of a foresight, hindsight, looking at, a crisis situation in a controlled environment. The transition contact offers to take Sam out to watch a basketball game at the Verizon Center. Tickets cost $70 each. Do you think he can accept? Okay, so I've got pretty much all reds on that one. I may be missing a green or so, but pretty much all reds. And I think that answer's right.
It's my answer.
Dave knows that the answer is right.
I'm just hoping it is, because it'd be so embarrassing.
Yeah. So the answer is that he can accept. So there's no personal relationship. It's clearly a gift. This person is a prohibited source. He works for a major defense contractor. So he's a prohibited source. It also looks like it's being given because of his official position. I mean, this is the only time that he met him. Why is he giving him the tickets in this situation? So the circumstances indicate it may hit both prongs. They don't have a personal relationship. It's over $20. Is it a widely attended gathering? No. Okay. OG put out guidance in 07X14 saying that sporting events generally are not widely attended gatherings, because you really they're not set up to have the type of interface where you can have a conversation with people with widely diverse views to assist, and that's really the point. And you would also have to get a write-off of agency interest. That might be pretty hard if you're just going to watch basketball, though basketball is great.
And interesting.
So I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so you just know this one's going to come up. And this is always a bit of a dicey one, and it takes a lot of work. As I said, gifts are given at a time of transition, and obviously one of the things that's going to be happening is going away parties for the departing employees. Whether they're happy parties or sad parties really isn't relevant to the gift analysis, but these parties are going to take place, and we're going to we'll be using the gift between employee analysis. These people are still employees, and so how are you going to pay for these going away parties? And as you know, the rules on gifts between employees has an exception for gifts appropriate to the occasion upon the termination of a superior subordinate relationship. And so these going away parties can be funded by employees, but the gift has to be appropriate. They are funded with voluntary contributions of nominal value. And this is where it sometimes gets a little dicey. What do we mean by voluntary? And there's not really a real strong definition for that, other than people have to have the right to say no. That said, actually there's been when I first came to the government, it was customary when a cabinet official left to give them their cabinet chair. Now, I don't know who made these cabinet chairs, but whoever did was making a tidy profit on them. As these things were expensive. These were just regular kind of leather, nice wooden chairs, leather, and they went for like $1,500 or $2,000 a piece. It was like, and maybe the tradition developed when they didn't go for $1,500, but that was the tradition, and usually at least at Labor, the tradition was that the senior managers all kicked in for this chair, and it was hard to raise enough money to do that. I think that gift has fallen out of favor to some degree, partly because it was so hard to raise the money for it. But the contributions do have to be voluntary, and that's going to determine how big a party it's going to be. And obviously, there's an exception for food to be shared at the office. But these will be, you will get questions about this, and people will come to your office and say, they've asked me for money, and I don't want to give, but I feel like I have to. I mean, at that point, you just got to be, and why do you feel like you have to? And it's because they said I did. Well, then you have a problem. Because everyone else is giving. Well, that can still be voluntary just because you're the only cheap one. No, voluntary doesn't mean that the person has to not feel awkward for not giving. I mean, this will happen, and hopefully it's not happening quite as much as it used to. Appropriate is a subjective term. What is appropriate for the occasion? Clearly, it's more than $10, because if it was less than $10, we wouldn't need the appropriate for the occasion exception. But what is appropriate is subject to some discussion. Maybe we'll discuss it. So here's the hypothetical. Naomi works for the Department of Health and Human Services. She entered into government service in 2010 and has worked under the same supervisor, Antonia, since she began. Antonia has decided to leave after the transition to seek employment in the private sector. Naomi, she's going to the private sector. I don't know why we're giving her a gift, but no, she's giving us a gift. No, Naomi would like to buy Antonia a gift. Which of the three gifts, and assume this is a gift from Naomi alone, would be most appropriate, or would be appropriate? Most appropriate isn't really relevant. As ethics office, we don't say, that's a nice watch, but I think a digital one would be more appropriate. Is it appropriate or not? So take out the most. Okay, she offers her a 3-day resort vacation at a well-known resort in southern Florida. Not appropriate. Okay, let me change the scenario a little bit. What if I have a apartment or I have a condo on Ocean Beach? You can stay there for 3 days as my goodbye gift to you. Yeah, it's a little, they've worked together for a long time. It's a gift terminating the supervisee relationship. Is it appropriate or not? We have a split decision in the audience. We had all reds for the first one, a bit of a split decision in that one. I think, yeah. Wise guy. No, I'm not going to repeat it. The question was, and you all had this question too, what if she just waits until a week after she leaves? At that point, you're kind of out of the standards of conduct. It still could look bad, particularly if that gift happened to correspond with a very large bonus that Naomi had gotten from Antonia in her last evaluation. So you have to worry. It's not covered by the gift rule. It could still look bad if the circumstances were correct. All right, how about a $700 bottle of champagne purchased solely by Naomi? No, because that's just too much to pay for champagne.
Yeah.
No, that's a little high. Oh, okay, we got the California delegation over there.
Strong yeses.
Strong yeses. No, that's a little much. I actually got tricked on this one. Just I probably shouldn't confess it. Just kidding. I had someone come up and it was termination, and someone said and this guy had actually, well, it doesn't matter. But the leaving employee said, can I give a gift to my former boss, because I'm leaving? It's more than $20, but it's just a kind of a joke bottle of wine. And I said, yeah, there's not a restriction on that. And then at the goodbye party, he gives him the bottle of wine. He goes, whoa, this is an expensive bottle. You know, the joke was how expensive it was, I guess. So you need to think about those. Okay. Naomi apparently caused much stress to her supervisor over the course of her career, so she gives him a $50 day spa gift certificate at a local masseuse. What about that? Okay, the masseuse lobby is strongly represented here, and everyone wants to get a back rub. Okay. All right. Okay. All righty. Here's Chris didn't know this was coming because I didn't know it was coming until I figured out what I'd written here. So Naomi's going out of town, going to work for the private sector. I actually had this one happen to me once. Not to me. But my boss was leaving and going to work for the private sector, and the private sector said, we're so proud of the service she did, and we're so excited to have her. We'll pay for a goodbye party for her at the agency. Ooh. And let's say the goodbye party is going to cost, let's say it's not exorbitant, but, you know, it's going to cost $200, $300, maybe $500. It's, you know, depending on the party. Yes, sir. Yes. You just waited till she left and then at the agency? Okay. That's one suggestion. Wait until she leaves and then have your party. Okay. What do you guys think of this party? Should we... No, is there any circumstance which the federal employee could attend? Under $20 per person? This one really gets tricky because who's the gift to? Because they're federal status. Yep. Mm-hmm. But here, if they're, and who is the gift to? Do you solve this by waiting a week, or is it a gift to the people who are going to attend, or is it a gift to the agency? I think it's a gift to the attendee, certainly. We treated this, we didn't let them do it because it was the Tobacco Institute and we didn't like them. No, but we treated it as in our case, she hadn't left yet, so we treated it as a gift from a prohibited source, even though she was going to work for them. But if she had left, I think we would have treated it as we would have looked at it probably as a gift to the agency, and I think we would have not thought that was an appropriate gift to the agency. Once it got to the agency, if it got to the agency somehow because of an appropriate gift or a co-sponsored event, now there's an interesting use of co-sponsored event, then I think you'd analyze these gifts as to whether or not it's a widely attended gathering appropriate for the person to go. You're going to see this with goodbye parties. I mean, this may actually happen that they might have a welcome to my company party for her. That's probably even more likely. And then can you go to that event? And then you analyze that under the widely attended gathering exception. And sometimes it might be okay because of the people who are going to be there. Might be only light refreshments, but not likely. But then you'd analyze that as to whether or not this is appropriate as a widely attended gathering. (207C), yeah, I'm not sure you get to communication with an intent to influence there, but yeah, make sure they don't do any lobbying at this thing. Okay. On to gifts to and from pre-confirmation nominees. I have to admit, this has not happened to me, but then again, people just don't give me gifts. Okay, sometimes you've got a lag time between when someone gets nominated and when they actually get confirmed and appointed. Did I say sometimes? There's always going to be a lag time between when someone gets appointed and or when they get nominated and when they get appointed. And sometimes these people will just stay away from your agency or remain in the private sector until they get confirmed. Other times they will come on as consultants or advisors while they're waiting for confirmation. That's done under 5 U.S.C. 3109. 5 U.S.C. 3109. This is not a gift rule. If you've got people coming, and this isn't an ethics responsibility, but I suspect many of you will get caught with it. The questions that come up when they come under this authority is what can they do and what can't they do? What are appropriate things for the people to be engaged in while they're awaiting nomination? Most White Houses will put out guidance on that very early in the administration, so keep your eyes open for that guidance. The key fact there is they cannot assume the duties of even though they're serving as an advisor or consultant, they can't be doing the duties that are attendant to the position they're nominated for. Obviously, they're in an acting capacity, and even if they're not doing it as acting, it just really ticks off the Senate Confirmation Committee. And the White House doesn't want them doing that. So be really careful with these people as to what duties they're performing when they're advisors and consultants, because that actually is the biggest problem with these folks, not the gift problem. But if they remain off and they offer you a gift, for example, you've helped them with their financial disclosure, and a Otto McClellan Scotch, 12-year, shows up on your desk. Can you accept that? Cards. No, you can't. It's a gift from it's a gift from an outside source. It's clearly being given to you because of your official duties. You may even be wandering into 209 land there. But clearly a gift because of your official duties. It's a little tricky because if they were actually a government employee, and if they gave you that bottle of scotch after they became a government employee, or after they got confirmed, then we would analyze it as a gift. And there aren't prohibitions about gifts between subordinates and supervisors. There's issues that raises, but it's not covered by the gift rule. So it's very important on whether or not they're an employee or not. Now, if they're one of these 3109 people and are there as consultants, just be really careful. I would not be at all surprised if they're making less money than you. Indeed, given the pay, if you're an SES employee, given pay comprehension, this is kind of ironic, your bosses may be making less money than you even after they get confirmed. So just keep that in the back of your head on those kind of things. So you may not be able to accept that bottle of McClellan 12-year-old scotch, which would make me sad. Okay. Okay, I think that's, so let's go to another example. Arun is a career SES. Oh, I gave this one away. At the Department of Energy, recently the new president nominated Sally to be the director of the Office of Science, a position requiring Senate confirmation. Sally and Arun went to college together but have not spoken in many years. Sally is expected to be confirmed quickly, but until she's confirmed, the Department of Energy determines she meets the criteria under 3109 and has contracted for her to encumber a temporary position in the Office of Science. Arun would like to take Sally out to celebrate her nomination. Can he? Give me a card. First, can she do that under the rules? Slow with the cards. Oh, assume it's over $20. I mean, if it's under $20, it kind of sends a bad signal. Mostly greens. Sally's an SES. No, Arun is the SES, so it's likely that Sally might in fact be making less than the SES is in this 5109 position. Should Sally, or should Arun take Sally out to celebrate the nomination? Yeah, mostly reds, and I think that's probably good judgment. Certainly should not be giving her a big gift. What if Sally were still what if Sally were in the private, had been confirmed or had not been confirmed and was not a government employee at this point? What if she was just waiting to be confirmed? Can Arun give her a gift in that case? Nothing in the gift rule says she can't. Is it any better idea than when she was a 3109? No, it's not a better idea. Now, there is a little red herring in here, and it's just a little red herring, which is, what about the personal relationship exception? And actually, yeah, they haven't. It's a little tricky because it's just going out to dinner, and I might well take out a long lost friend to dinner. So it's a little tricky. Just remember the most famous personal relationship test was the guy who accepted a gift from his college roommate and lost his job. And now the gift in that case was a trip to the Super Bowl. But and the former college roommate was a lobbyist. But the person said, well, no, that's based on a personal relationship. No one believed that. And Secretary Espy lost his job at the Department of Agriculture and spent the next 3 years battling a extremely zealous special, what do you call them, special counsel. Extremely zealous special counsel. One of the last special counsels, coincidentally, I'm sure. Okay. Now, we've talked about what gifts you can take and what gifts you can't take. Now, assuming you take some gifts, how do you report them?
You want to go through this? We have about 5 minutes left.
I think I've gone through that.
Okay, great. So as a final note, just a reminder that if you accept a gift and whether it's something that is permissible to accept or whether something is impermissible to accept, and it meets the reporting threshold, it needs to show up on your 278E if you're a public filer or your 450 if you're a confidential filer. Just a quick story. This is from one of our prosecution surveys. This was a gentleman that worked at HUD. He received a number of gifts from a CEO, including tickets to an inaugural event, and did not put that on his 450, signed his 450. The Department of Justice prosecuted him for a criminal violation of a false certification under 18 U.S.C. Section 1018, and he was sentenced to 12 months of probation and a $1,000 fine. So it's very important that you remember, or that your folks remember, that even if you can accept a gift, if it's over the threshold, you still have to report it. And if you can't accept a gift, you still have to report it. So if you take something and it's illegal, well, you have to report it. So make sure you report it.
Or give it back.
Or give it back, or deal with the double charges. So thank you all very much. And
so we'll hang around for questions or tips. No, that'd be wrong. No.
Thank you for joining us after our session on proposed gift and gift amendments and gift-related issues. We are joined now by Nicole Stein, the chief of the agency assistance branch at OGE, and also, more importantly, put together this summit. So
Yes. Many months of planning.
thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Have you breathed a huge sigh of relief yet, or
I have.
any initial impressions about the summit?
I think all the planning was successful. It seems like people have enjoyed the sessions. We know that people have been watching virtually. All the rooms have been full. People haven't been hanging around the hallways. So I know that people are enjoying the content.
Yeah.
Full sessions. So
Have you received any initial feedback?
to see, people definitely have liked that we've had it 3 days in a row. People have been stopping by the registration desk with positive feedback, and that they've seen ethics officials they haven't seen in a while. So, we just were finishing up the survey. So for those of you that were watching virtually, either tomorrow or earlier in the week, we'll be sending out a survey on our listserv, so you can provide feedback on what the virtual experience was like. I mean, this year we streamed from 2 rooms, which was an increase from 1 room in 2014. So we'd like to get your feedback of how we could make this experience better, or if it was a positive experience, which hopefully it was,
Yes.
to let us know.
Right, so that's important to know, whether the feedback is positive or negative.
Right,
We'd
we
like
wanna
to know
hear
so
it.
that we can respond and better serve our
And if there were sessions that weren't streamed that you saw on the agenda that you would have liked to have seen, our training group still will be doing the Advanced Practitioner Series, so it's good for us to know that, I wasn't able to watch that live. Can you make that available? So that would be good feedback for us to hear as well.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks
and
for having me.
congratulations again.
Thank you. Thanks.
And we will cut away and we'll come back with our last interview for the day. Welcome back, and we are joined now by Shelley Finlinson, our Chief of Staff and Program Counsel, and our Director, Walter Schaub. Welcome.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So, it's hard to believe that we are now at the end of the summit. I'd like to know what impressions you may have about, what you've been hearing, what you've seen, just general impressions of the summit.
It's been a terrific event. It's been so nice to have all the ethics officials together where we could interact. We've had hundreds of people talking in the halls, trading tips. The sessions have been fantastic, and I think I'm still recovering from my lively panel yesterday. That was a lot of fun. Probably the most fun I've had at a conference before.
Yes, that was quite lively.
I want to say it's really satisfying to have everyone in the community come together on the theme that we have this time, which is preparing for the presidential transition. We all have such an important role to play in that process. It has been fabulous, from the panels of outside folks who have been committed to this in the past to getting ethics officials really teed up and ready to go and preparing for this important role that we play in the transition. So it's been fabulous, and we've been getting a lot of really positive feedback and energy about preparing.
I must say, the sessions that I've been able to see about transition, it seems like, we've really provided a lot of tools and tips for people to prepare for what's to come. And have you received any initial additional feedback about that?
I think from the people I've talked to, they're really charged up to be ready to deliver a good transition. And for many of them, it's already started in the sense of counseling outgoing officials or notifying people of their financial disclosure requirements. When we hit the election period and we actually have incoming officials, More, better, faster is going to be our mantra. More, better, faster. We did a great job last time. We cleared every single one they sent us very quickly, broke all kinds of records. But this time we want them to send them to us faster. We didn't reach maximum capacity until summer 2009. We had more we could have given, and we were ready for more. This time around, we're even more prepared, more tools, more training. The ethics community's ready for it. We just got to educate those campaigns and the presidential transition team to send those nominees to us earlier. We'll do more, we'll do them better, and we'll do them faster.
Sounds good.
I mean, I think a theme we've heard over and over during this summit is that preparation really is the key. That the summit is almost a kickoff, although we've been preparing long before now and producing those tools and getting our staff ready, agency ethics officials turning to that and preparing succession planning within their own ethics programs, for example. But preparation is so key, and we've really been hearing that theme throughout the sessions.
Yes.
Well, there you have it. I think that concludes what we have for the National Government Ethics Summit this year. Just a reminder that we do have one session still streaming in live stream 2, and that's going to be on understanding core elements of the post-employment restrictions. In the meantime, since we'll be signing off from this room, we would definitely like to thank all of our presenters and speakers for putting on exceptional sessions. And we'd also like to thank USDA and all of the viewers who have been watching us virtually and providing tweets and their experiences.
And a
of
big
course,
thanks goes out to the Federal Housing Finance Agency for lending us this facility. That's what's enabled us to put this on for 1% of the cost of past conferences.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful
Absolutely.
space, yes. Thank you to FHFA.
So with that, Liz
Goodbye.
Horton for OGE. Thank you, and have a productive, efficient, and ethical transition.
That's right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.